Hello, my name is Kirioth, and today we are going to talk about the 8,532 announcements from Games Workshop at GenCon. That was actually a massive overstatement, but when I read the article on the Warhammer community site, I did have a moment of, okay, sure, let me catch up, give me a moment, let me read the list. So there are some products at GenCon that we already knew about. That, you know, we were aware of Adeptus Titanicus, the Lord of the Rings, new box, new edition. There was a bit of information about Space Marine Adventures, the Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champions card game, which we'd heard about. Wrath and Glory, obviously know about that. However, there is stuff here that I had no idea was a thing, that I had no idea existed. One of them has existed for quite some time, and I don't know how I've missed it. I don't know who it's aimed at, I don't know who it's targeted at, I don't know what age range it's for. That is the Gretchen's board game, which if it hadn't been in this article, and apparently talked about in line with the GenCon stuff, I would have had no clue this existed. So there's a Gretchen's board game. I don't know whether you knew that. You may well have done. I missed it completely. On top of that, though, there's that. That's apparently already out. That's fine. Blitz Bowl, that was shown at GenCon. So it's like Blood Bowl, but condensed, boiled down. It's like a tightly focused version of it. There's also the Lord of the Rings Quest to Mount Doom board game. There is also, what was the other one? Or two. Yeah, that was it. There's also Warhammer Doomseeker, which has you take the role of a slayer, and you go out and die a glorious death, and whoever's done the best before dying wins the game. There's also a WizKids game, Dice Masters Battle for Ultramar, which is about rolling dice. That's all you're going to get out of me. I've no idea. I've never come across this before. But you get a bunch of cards and you get a bunch of dice. Make your own assumptions out of that. The biggest one, the most mental one, the one that I was expecting even less than the flood of every other board game known to man, is Warhammer 40,000 Munchkin. I mean, it's not out till next year, so it's a 2019 release, but there is actually going to be a Warhammer 40,000 version of Munchkin. What is going on? What is happening between this and Monopoly? Right, this is like brand kind of, well, I don't even know the word. Diversification, separation, splashing, the likes of which I don't think I've really properly seen, or at least maybe we have seen. If you look at any other film, like any film franchise, I'm sure there's been way worse examples, but I'm just not used to it. This is 40k. This is Warhammer. This is Games Workshop. They only do this to video games, right? They only throw the IP at anyone who can reasonably stitch two lines of code together when it comes to video games. They don't do it for anything else. And yet, there is an actual concerted effort here, by the look of it, to push 40k and push Age of Sigmar right out into completely different markets. Now, that's not a complaint, but it is slightly overwhelming. When I was like, okay, let's see what they had for us at GenCon, I was not expecting this. I was not expecting Munchkin. I wouldn't even say it was like low on the list of things I assumed would ever happen, because why would you ever assume that was going to happen to begin with? You just wouldn't, would you? You just wouldn't assume that was ever going to be a thing. On the upside, to be honest, if anything is going to have like a 40k edition, I'd say Munchkin is actually not a bad shout, to be perfectly honest. I mean, Warhammer 40k is kind of ripe for the piss taking. You can take the piss out of it yourself as much as you like. You can make it as daft as you like. You can make it as serious as you like. There are things in there that make no sense whatsoever. Accepted parts of the universe, of the lore, that obviously make no sense at all. Like, I mean, the chainsword, I'm sorry, is a fucking terrible weapon. It is useless. It would clog. It would just get jammed. Half the shit that Space Marines fight are other Space Marines. So, it doesn't do anything against armour. What's the point? But the thing is, it looks badass. Doesn't stop it being daft, but it looks awesome. Munchkin has got the right mix of kind of self-awareness and take the pissness that really kind of suits Warhammer 40,000. I am actually kind of interested to see what happens with that. I mean, we've got Munchkin, and it's a pretty fun game. It's a good game. I just never thought I'd see it. And with a 40,000 version of it, with a Warhammer 40k version of it, are we then going to see like an Age of Sigmar version? Is it going to be expanded out? Like, what about there's the Pirates version, what about like a Battlefleet Gothic version? I mean, really, the possibilities around this, I suppose it depends on how well it sells. But it's actually kind of not a bad idea. I quite like it. It'll be cartoonish, obviously, but they do say that the lead illustrator is a extreme Warhammer fanboy, which is actually genuinely nice to know. Even if no one else on the team cares about Warhammer 40k, having the artist care, that's nice. That's a nice touch, and will hopefully lead to it having the right feel. There is a example card on the page, which I'll try and remember to stick in the video. So yeah, I mean, Munchkin has my approval. Some of the other stuff is a bit weird. I don't really know who Dice Masters is aimed at. For instance, I mean, it says ages 14 plus. I do not have the market research available to me to judge whether or not that is a good idea, whether that works, and also details are kind of scarce in the article, so it's kind of tricky to tell. Given that I have no experience with a dice building battler, I mean, apparently it's iconic, but I don't know anything about it. Again, an easy partnership probably. Whether it translates to anything, I don't know. Weirdly, Doomseeker does look kind of interesting, if I'm honest. Having like taking on the role of a slayer and defeating different foes, and then eventually when everyone's dead, you find out who did the best by getting the most renown. I kind of like that. It's an interesting idea. Collectible card game, I don't really know anything about that market at all. I have no clue. It seems an odd way to go, but would it appeal to people who play things like Magic? Is Pokemon still a thing? I don't know. It could be. It was popular when I was a kid, but that was literally 20 years ago, so really I've got nothing when it comes to that. I mean, it's one of those things where as an outsider to that particular circle, it looks interesting and it looks good, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll do well. It'll be interesting to see whether people who actually play stuff like Magic go for this, or whether it'll end up being like a side hobby picked up by people who already play Age of Sigmar. It'd be interesting to find out which way that goes, actually. The Space Marine Adventures thing, that's going to be like a bookstore thing, so sold in places like Barnes & Noble, which I don't think we have in the UK. I don't know whether they'll be sold in like... I don't know if we have any... But I mean, Waterstones? I think that's like the only bookshop I can think of in the UK, like the only big one. I don't know whether it'll be sold places like that, but again, that seems to be another attempt to drag people in from the outside, which I don't really have a problem with at all. Also, if you are a completionist, a collector, and you wish to have all the Space Marine models, it's got some of the Space Marine hero stuff that you could only get in Japan, and those are the models that are in there, so you can grab it and get those. I think I saw somewhere that it was about $45, $39, $40, something like that, maybe $45, something like that. The one that confuses me the most, and it genuinely baffles me just because I didn't know that this was a thing, the Lord of the Rings Quest to Mount Doom board game. That is weird to me, just because that is a really weird, blurry line. When it comes to Lord of the Rings and Games Workshop, I assumed that they had rights for things like, producing miniatures. Now, it looks like there are models in this. There are like minis in this game. There's 5 of them by the look of it. I suppose it is technically a miniatures game, but it's way closer to a board game than a miniatures game. There's like a few miniatures, a massive board and a bunch of cards. It's a weird kind of blurring of what I thought Games Workshop was actually allowed to do with Lord of the Rings. I would have thought if there was going to be some sort of Lord of the Rings board game, there may already be a Lord of the Rings board game for all I know, it wouldn't necessarily be something that Games Workshop is involved in, because that's not their domain. That's not their speciality. That is not what I would have assumed they had signed, like, for the ability to create when they did their deal to produce miniatures and a system for Lord of the Rings as an IP. So that one is interesting to me just because it has it's something that I didn't think Games Workshop would necessarily be the ones to create. It's as I say, a strange blurring of what I thought they could and could not do, just because I don't think they've done anything like this before for Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or whatever. I don't think I've seen them do something specifically like this. Now, of course, we've got things like kind of the various different half board, half kind of miniature games that they've made in the past. You know, we've got things like Shadespire, and we've got the what was it, the Assassination Force or whatever it was called, Execution Force box. They're sort of a midway point, kind of, but those are things that Games Workshop just own outright. They are wholly theirs. Lord of the Rings isn't. That's a licensed thing. So really, I suppose my interest in the Lord of the Rings race or quest to Mount Doom is partially, is it decent? Because it looks interesting, in fairness. And partially, is this something that they could have done before? Like, could they have made this stuff before? Is this an avenue that they're going to go down further? Are they going to properly shift out into not just producing stuff themselves, but maybe partnering with other people to produce games using their IP, the same as they do with the video games, on a much grander scale? I mean, it's already a kind of grand scale because half this shit is new, and is a kind of a departure from what they've done before. But especially with stuff like Lord of the Rings, where it's an external IP that's been licensed by Games Workshop, it's interesting to see where they can take that and whether that will act as a way of actually getting the system itself a bit more attention. So yeah, I mean, that's the GenCon stuff's kind of weird. It's been a weird kind of bunch of reveals, stuff that we knew about, stuff that, and I mean, there's a good chance that I've just missed it. Like, I haven't seen the leaks or the news / rumours of these things existing. That's entirely possible, but a good couple of things from GenCon were completely new to me. I had no clue that things like the Dice Masters thing were coming. I didn't know anything about Doomseeker. I had no idea about that Lord of the Rings board game. It's interesting and it's strange because it's a diversifying the brand somewhat, and outside of video games, just not used to Games Workshop doing that quite the way that they are now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this stuff in the future, whether they continue to go down that route or not. But there's a couple of things on here that I am actually looking forward to trying. Lord of the Rings one, Doomseeker does look interesting, and I mean, Warhammer 40k Munchkin is going to at least be entertaining at the very least. So yeah, that is the stuff from GenCon that Games Workshop announced. Bit of a weird mix. Be interested to hear what you think about this lot. Like, is there stuff on there that you think sounds great, or do you think some of it sounds not good? Think Munchkin will work? Is there some of this stuff on this list where you've just looked at it and gone, I'm sorry, what? Because there's a good chance I'll be right there with you. I've linked the article down below, so, you know, click it and have a look. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to click Patreon, subscribe, videos, all of that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click if you don't want to. And I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.